Five greatest modern-day thieves. From Robin Hood to Bonnie and Clyde, our fascination with thieves and lawbreakers is undeniable. The danger, excitement, and idea of beating the establishment is something that interests us all. While there are thousands of stories of robbers and thieves, every now and then, one comes along that can really blow you away. From concept to execution, the following people gain the distinction of being the five greatest modern-day thieves. Number 5. Valerio Vici. After moving to London, Valerio Vici looked like a typical, handsome Italian playboy. The son of a lawyer, his charm and good looks gave him access to hobnob with society's finest. But Valerio was hiding a big secret no one knew. He was a wanted man for committing over 50 armed robberies. On July 12, 1987, Valerio, along with an accomplice, walked into the Knightsbridge Safe Deposit Center, where they pretended they needed to open a deposit box. Once shown the vault, the pair brandished guns and subdued security. Hanging a closed sign on street level, Valerio led in other members of his gang, and they proceeded to plunder 121 safety deposit boxes. The bank was known to be used by many rich and famous people. Inside the boxes were jewels, drugs, and cash, estimated to be worth $77 million, and all of them were taken. The robbers then left without incident, but when police did arrive, they discovered a bloody handprint on one of the boxes and traced it to Valerio. By August, the cops were on the gang's tail. Many of his accomplices were arrested, but Valerio managed to elude authorities and make his way to Latin America. This would have been the perfect crime for him, but his greed got the best of him. He returned to England in the fall to fetch his Ferrari Testarossa, but unfortunately got recognized and then promptly arrested. He ended up with a 22-year sentence, but was deported to Italy, where he was placed in an open jail in Pescara. He was set free during the day and even allowed to run an Italian translation company. One morning in 2000, while heading to work, he and an accomplice got into a gunfight with police who believed he was planning another big robbery. Valerio was hit several times and died at the scene. Number 4. Albert Spa GRE. It was 1976. Albert, a prominent high society photographer, led a group of 20 men through the sewers of Nice in the southern portion of France to break open the vault of the Société Générale Bank. On July 16th, after a 2-month effort in digging a 10-yard-long tunnel from the sewer to the vault, Albert and his men finally broke through. Once inside, the men welded the bank vault shut so no one could get in and had themselves a little picnic. While drinking wine and eating pâté, they rifled through more than 400 safety deposit boxes. When all was said and done, they ended up walking away with an estimated $35 million worth of cash, securities, and other valuables. It took a while before officers found anything substantial, but by October, they had arrested one of the thieves. He ultimately cracked under the pressure and turned in many of those involved, including Albert. At the time, Albert was in Japan accompanying the mayor of Nice, Jacques Médecin, as a photographer, but upon his return, he was arrested at the airport. During a court proceeding on March 10, 1977, Albert asked to see the judge, saying he was ready to name his accomplices. He gave a fake document written in code and came up to the judge to supposedly explain it. Suddenly, he ran towards the window, opened it, and jumped out, landing 3 stories below on the roof of a parked car. Before the police could run after him, he jumped on the back of a waiting motorcycle and sped away. He was never captured again. During his time away, he managed to write 2 books, one about the robbery and the other about his life. He also gave interviews and was linked to the CIA and never spent another day in jail after his escape. On June 8, 1989, Albert died of throat cancer, but the remains of the loot from the safety boxes have never been recovered. Number 3. Stefan Breit. A lot of people love art, but Stefan took it a big step further. The notorious French art thief has boastfully admitted to stealing over 239 pieces of art totaling over $1.4 billion as he traveled all across Europe working as a waiter. Stefan's art thieving began when he and his girlfriend found themselves inside a German medieval castle. With his girlfriend as a lookout, he proceeded to unfasten the nails on the frame before slipping a painting under his jacket and walking out. He would later use this technique while stealing from over 170 museums, most of which were small and regional or had lax security. The most expensive painting he stole was Sybil, Princess of Cleves. It was hung for a Sotheby's auction before Stefan cut it from its frame. It's estimated to be worth $7 million. He continued his escapade until November 2001 when he was finally caught stealing a rare bugle, one of only 3 in the world. A guard spotted him before he escaped, but never caught him. Stefan, however, returned to the museum 2 days later, at which time he was caught. He was imprisoned and charged, but it took a while for the Swiss officials to obtain a search warrant for his home in France. After 19 days, the warrant came, but by then his mother had destroyed all of the artworks, which he hung and kept inside his bedroom. His mother threw some paintings into the nearby canal, others were stuffed into the garbage disposal. Despite being caught, Stefan was proud of his accomplishments, even publishing an autobiography about his crimes and passion for art. A true art collector in the sense, he never attempted to sell any of the paintings. They were all simply kept for his own viewing pleasure. Number 2. Carl Goggin. Born in Pennsylvania, Carl had his first brush with the law when he was 15 years old and attempted to rob a candy store but was shot in the process. He survived, and after his juvenile records were erased, Carl managed to obtain a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering and afterwards a master's degree in systems analysis. Despite being well learned, Carl was obsessed with the idea of stealing from banks and liked to plan mock robberies in his spare time. After several false starts where he got cold feet, he finally managed to commit his first robbery and used a stolen vehicle to get away. True to being an engineer, Carl was a meticulous planner. He began by studying the streets and topographical features of the area around the bank. He preferred to hit banks in small towns that had wooded areas and freeway access nearby. Instead of hauling his loot, he would create a hiding spot near the bank so he could return to it later on. Once a bank was chosen, he would watch the habits of the employees closely from the woods and then hit the bank, usually on a Friday night, right before closing time. He chose this time to minimize the number of people inside the bank, and this is what gave him the moniker of the Friday night bank robber. During the crime itself, Carl took no risk, donning a scary mask, usually Freddy Krueger, and disguising his build by moving quickly around in a crab-like manner. He would terrify the customers and employees. He would make his way to the cash, grab anything he could with his hands before making a quick exit. The whole thing was done in 2 minutes. Using this strategy, it's estimated he acquired more than $2 million from over 50 banks. He was finally caught when one of his hiding spots was discovered and turned over to the police. Carl admitted to his crimes and even worked with the FBI on a bank robbery video, which helped him cut his sentence from 115 years to just 17.5. Carl could never answer why he did what he did. He simply said that ever since he had been caught robbing that candy store, he always felt that he was stuck in a rut, and the only way out was to steal. Number 1. Dan Cooper. It was November 24th, 1971. A man known only as Dan Cooper purchased a one-way ticket on Flight 305 at the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter. The flight was on a planned 30-minute route from Portland, Oregon to Seattle, Washington. Sitting at seat 18C, Dan Cooper had on a black lightweight raincoat, a neatly pressed collared shirt, thin necktie, and he was carrying a black attaché case. Cooper lit up a cigarette and asked for a bourbon and soda. Soon afterwards, he slipped a small note to the stewardess nearest him. Thinking it was a phone number, she placed it inside her bag without ever even looking at it. Noticing this, Dan leaned in and told her she best read it before politely saying he had a bomb. He then dictated his demands: $200,000 in American dollars, 4 parachutes, 2 primary and 2 reserves, and a refueling truck in Seattle for the aircraft. They landed in Seattle, and once his demands were met, Dan Cooper set everyone free except for the pilot, a flight attendant, the co-pilot, and flight engineer. He then informed them they would fly him to Mexico where they would drop him off. By 8 p.m., the air stair apparatus had been activated, indicating the pressure in the cabin had changed. In the back of the plane, the crew found the exit door open and no sign of Dan Cooper anywhere. He had jumped from the plane into the stormy night somewhere over Washington State with his parachute and cash in hand. Among the initial suspects was a man named D.B. Cooper, but he was subsequently cleared. Unfortunately, an errant reporter mistakenly used that name, and today, instead of Dan Cooper, the infamous heist is attributed to D.B. Cooper instead. To this day, no one knows for sure whether Dan Cooper survived his jump. The only evidence ever to show up was in 1980 when a young boy in Washington State found $5,800 of the money washed up in a riverbank. To this day, Dan Cooper remains the only person to have ever successfully conducted an unsolved hijacking in all of aviation's history. So those were 5 of the greatest modern-day thieves. They all dared to break the law, some were apprehended, others killed, and one possibly got away. Whatever the outcome, their names will forever be remembered for their brazen attempts to take whatever they wanted. If you enjoyed this video, then please remember to subscribe to our Scary Mysteries channel, and we'll bring you a new video each Sunday. Thank you very much for all the positive comments, and thanks again for tuning in. See you next week.